All right, everybody, welcome to the April Early Access Deep Dive. This month, we're doing it on ScreenFlow and screencasting. Several of you have asked me about it. I know this isn't in the wheelhouse of everybody, but I do think screencasting is a tool that everybody could potentially use. And I'm going to talk about that later. But before we do, I feel like we're going to church here. My wife works for Disney, so she got a copy of the Steve Jobs book, and I've really been enjoying it. You can get a free copy on the iBookstore, but it's written by the folks like Laureen Powell Jobs, Johnny Ive, the people who were like really his best friends. And Bob Iger was among those. And every time I have any involvement with Bob Iger as part of my wife's Disney employee, he talks about Steve Jobs. He's a big fan of the guy. And I find it interesting because, Steve is very polarizing, and the kind of, I think the common story in the media about him is what a jerk he was. And he certainly was at times. But I've also talked to a lot of people who tell me how great he was. One that comes to mind is Sal Sagoyan, who did the automation for Apple for all those years and just said, Steve could come in the room and he could figure out exactly what your problem was, like a laser with whatever product you were making. And he just said he had such an insight into products. Anyway, there was a quote in here that I really liked, and it really kind of landed for me. That's why I say it feels like church. I'm reading it. But when he got picked as the Beethoven of business, as the businessman of the decade, one of his buddies wrote him and said, "Well, Steve, it doesn't get any better than that. You're Beethoven of business." And he wrote back one line: "Sic transit gloria, all glory is fleeting." And I feel like, boy, we all need to remember that. Even a guy like Steve Jobs, when he's the businessman of the year, realizes that none of that really means much. Either way, so that was fun. Let's talk about screencasting. I have been doing screencasting for like 20 years. I've always felt like it was a great way to work with my staff. And that was how I first got started doing it. I wanted to make sure the people that worked for me could do the stuff I needed them to do. As a lawyer, we have a lot of different forms we need to fill out on websites and different things we need to do. And the people that were working for me, sometimes they would do it every day, but a lot of them they would only do as needed, which could be every couple weeks or couple months or even every couple years. So what I started doing was I would make little videos for them every time I did one that I wanted them to do for me in the future. And my thought was, if I walk them through with a video, then we could save it on a shared partition of the hard drive at the office. And it would be, say, instructions, to fill out the state franchise tax board, yada, yada, yada. And they would just be in her or his folder. And every time I asked them to do it, they could just go watch the video again. And then I wouldn't have to teach them how to do it. So that's what got me started on this. It wasn't the MacSparky stuff. It was actually pre-MacSparky. And over the years, I used a lot of tools for this. There's been many companies that have come and gone over the years to make these video tools. Currently on the Apple products, there are additional ones like Camtasia or even QuickTime, which you can make a quick and dirty one for. What I will say is ScreenFlow is by far the best for doing this. If you want to have any production value at all, I recommend ScreenFlow. And if you're looking for something even simpler, what I would recommend is a subscription service called Loom. And the advantage of Loom, if you're just using it on a small team, is you don't have to do any of the editing stuff I'm about to show you. Instead, you just record it, and then it saves it to the cloud, and then you send a link to the person and they can watch it. But if you're even for in-house training stuff, I actually prefer to do it with your own video, do your own edit, and then you can keep it, and you can always go back and edit it later if things change for you. So in addition to making things like field guides and MacSparky Labs videos, I think this stuff can have a lot of use for you in a lot of ways. And like I said, there have been a lot of tools, but ScreenFlow, I don't know about, what is it now, Jeff? About 7-8 years ago, they really just kind of took the lead and nobody ever came for them after that. They just continued to make it better and better. And some of the tools I'll show you today are things that I never would have dreamed of in my screencasting app. In fact, when I first started doing this, I would record the videos with various tools, and then I would edit them in Final Cut because the original screencasting tools were just there to record. ScreenFlow gives you everything. It gives you the tools to record. It also gives you the ability to edit it. And The app costs $100 on the App Store, although if you decide to get it, I recommend buying it from them directly. They do upgrades about every year or two, and if you buy it from them directly, it's just an easier process. Um, they do, however, honor the App Store customers. Like usually when they release a new version, they put it on as a significant discount in the App Store for like a week. So if you bought the prior version and you're tuned in, you can get it, basically at an upgrade price. So that's the app I use. Let me talk about how I do it. So we're going to just dive right into it. Let me share my screen real quick. All right. So there is, I've got the ScreenFlow settings here. Just give me a second to arrange things here. And I'm going to go ahead and activate ScreenFlow and open a new document. And if you can see that, everybody see the new document window? I always wonder, okay, that's good. You can see it's showing a couple different inputs and giving me various options here. You can make a new recording. You can create a new document. You can go from a template, and I'm not going to get into templates today. We only have an hour. And then you can also look at recent documents. You can see I've been working on the Obsidian Field Guide. But anyway, so recording, the way that works is you choose the tools you're going to record from. And I'm going to just start from scratch here. So I'm going to delete these. And ScreenFlow will search your system for things that you can use to make a recording with. So if I hit the plus button here, you can say, well, I've got a few things available to me. The first thing is my Pro Display XDR. That's my screen. So I'll go ahead and click that. And now I'm recording the screen. Then I'm going to record my audio too. And I use the Elgato Wave XLR for my audio input. So I'll do that. And you see how there's a little eyeball next to it here. If I click that eyeball, it gives me a preview. And you can see that's a live feed of my microphone right now. See, if I get too close or too loud, it gives me a live level. And you don't want those levels at red. In fact, one of the things I always do when I make a new recording is say a few things into it to make sure it's not red. Now, if I were to turn up my level, now I've turned up my level and it's getting pretty hot. So you don't want it to get that hot. You always want to leave room in the audio to fix it later. And so you keep it, about that layer. And then you have the option to add additional things if you want. Like you could get the audio from the computer. Like if you're doing an application and it makes noises that you want to include in the recording, you can click that. You can click from your video cameras. And I happen to have a few attached here. I've got the Camlink 4K is what I'm using, but I could also tie into the iPhone camera now. I can do the FaceTime, which is on the closed lid of my laptop. So that wouldn't show you very much. And I have the camera software installed, but I'm going to use Camlink. And then once again, I have the eyeball, so I can click that and see the preview. And then I've got my devices. So this is how you pick what's going to get added to your ScreenFlow, to your recording. And the what I would recommend is, just kind of play with these and get used to them and understand that sometimes they connect and disconnect. You may need to reconnect them. You just want to check it when you get started on a session. One of the reasons that I stopped using the Opal camera is that it kept disconnecting. But you can also turn these off and on once they're connected. So I can turn the video off or turn the Pro Display off. And often when I finish a recording, I may want to go back and fix a line or two. And in that case, I just uncheck everything except the audio. And then I can go and do a couple voiceovers that I can drop in. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But it's a pretty simple process. The application over the years has really made it a lot easier to do this. It used to be much more difficult. So that's how you make a recording setup. But the way I actually do these is I actually start by creating a Canvas document, and that's under the new document tab. And you can see they've got presets here, 4K, 1440, which is really 2K, and 1080, which is 1K or HD. And then you can also make it capture for your various devices. However, I rarely recommend using these. These will set up the screen for an iPhone or an iPad. But in my experience, most people want to watch this stuff on YouTube or a screen that is, square like a TV screen. So I'd rather frame an iPad or a Mac on a regular size screen so people can see it. For the stuff I do, I think this makes more sense. If you're screen flowing stuff for work, it's the same thing. So I would generally recommend one of these resolutions. Lately, I've been doing a lot of 4K stuff in the labs that goes into YouTube. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it just kind of depends on what I'm making, whether it makes sense or not. That's a bigger file, and it takes more space, more bandwidth, but it's bigger. But once I'm done, I go ahead and click the button here to create the new document. And now I've created a new document. And the very first thing I do is save the document. Command S is your friend. I'm going to save this one to the desktop, and I'm going to call this Labs Screen Flow Example. In fact, it just occurred to me, I'm going to go ahead and make this file downloadable. I'll zip it and put it up in the labs. So if any of you want to download the sample of ScreenFlow and play with this later, you can do that and have fun, go nuts. So there we go. Now we've saved the file. I just like having a file saved as I get started. And then, that's really it for file setup. The only thing I would recommend is if you want to do this, get yourself some sort of external mic. And by that, I don't mean get yourself the most expensive mic you can find. You don't need that. You can use, I see a couple folks out there that have nice mics already. That's great. If you're just doing this for use with a few people, a USB headset mic that you get for $15 at Target is already 100 times better than the built-in microphone on your Mac. Now, the Mac mic arrays have been getting better, but a headset mic plugged in is going to sound better than anything the Mac can do because it just gets so much room noise. And the thing with this stuff is the audio is almost more important than the video. If the audio is really bad, people just can't watch it. So for as low as $15 or $20, you can probably get a mic that's going to sound better than what you've got. Some people write me and say, well, what about AirPods? Get the AirPods and plug them into the Mac. I don't think it's very good, but it'll do. A wired USB mic, like I said, is not that expensive. And if you're going to be doing this, I would recommend that. Over the years, I have slowly upgraded. For the longest time, I used a USB-based Rode podcaster microphone, which I think cost me about $200 with the boom stand. And I did a lot of work on that for years. Now I've upgraded a couple of years ago to the Heil, which is like ridiculous. I think it was like a $600 mic, but it really helps with the audio for the stuff I'm doing now. I mean, people are paying me to make videos for them. You guys want good videos. So I decided to get the better one. But this is the in-game mic for me. I'm not going to be upgrading from this one. But get yourself, like I said, just the most basic mic. The return on investment with microphones after $200 is very small, in my opinion. So just get yourself a decent mic and then you're off to the races. If you're going to do a camera setup, just have a good camera. Even the built-in camera on the Mac is great. Depending on what kind of screencasting you're doing, though, you don't need to have a camera running. Like even on the stuff I'm doing in the labs, I like having a camera. I like coming to you personally, but a lot of the stuff, I just take the camera off the screen because it's a distraction. So either way, that's the setup. Now we're done. We're going to start recording. So the way you can do that in ScreenFlow, there's a couple ways. They've got a menu bar tool here, which I'm not showing. Let me put that in. You can see that. If you click on that, you've got some options. But you can see there's a keyboard command there, Shift Command 2. And I actually put it on one of my Stream Deck pedals. But if you just click Shift Command 2, it starts and stops the recording. And then we can just start recording once we hit that up. So we're setting up the canvas. We're setting up the inputs. I've got a couple recording tips for you before I hit the button. The first is, gaps are your friend. I mean, one of the things I think you might mistakenly do when you first start doing this is start recording and feel like it's live video. When you're doing recording, then it's not. So you have all the time in the world. You can, when you hit the record button, you can wait a minute, get yourself set up things that you want, and then start talking. And then if you get lost while you're recording and you decide, I want to stop and do something different with this, you can stop. It doesn't matter. It's just a recording. Later, you're going to go and cut it all out. I mean, yesterday I was recording a video for the labs, and right in the middle of a really productive recording session, the plumber called. But I've had this thing going on with my house, and I had to take the call. I didn't even stop the recording. I just took the call, walked away from the computer, dealt with the plumber, and then I came back, I selected that section and deleted it, and now it's gone. You can be very patient as you do this process, and the more patient you are, I think the better the recording comes out. Another thing I always try to do in terms of these recordings is do test runs. When you run a test run, before you even hit the button, whatever you want to do, whether you want to share it with a team member or make a video for people in the world, just go through it once, test it out, and it's fine. And then once you start recording, if a line comes out funny or if you flub a word, just stop. Don't move the mouse. That's the real problem. If you move the mouse, then all of a sudden things start looking weird when you edit it. But if you don't move the mouse, you can take an unlimited number of takes on every sentence. And it's much easier to fix an entire sentence than an entire word. And you'll see as we edit it, you can go through and just delete the audio and put the new sentence audio in. I use a click system when I do this. So when I go through, I have, I click the microphone, I could go like that. And it's just a little, thing with my tongue off the roof of my mouth. But when you look at the audio recording later, you'll see that it's a spike. So if I look at the recording wave format, a click for me means I did a retake of the audio, a single click. If I do two clicks, it means I started the video again. I had a problem. I had to restart whatever I was trying to teach. And 3 clicks for me is hell with it. I'm starting over, And then when I see it later in the wave format, I can just go through and fix it really quick. In fact, I'm going to hit record now and start doing some of this stuff so you guys can see that in a minute. So here we go. I'm going to hit Shift Command 2, and I've got this message showing up on my screen, and now I am officially recording. If you look up at the icon, you can see there's a little dot in there to say that you've got a hot mic and you're going. But just to share the click stuff, 1 click but 3 clicks is a restart. And I'm going to show you that in a minute when we see the edit of this file. Some other stuff I do is I always try to speak slower than I think I need to. As humans, whenever we start to do, and this is like speaking 101 tip, but whenever you speak to other people, you tend to rush. And even though you understand what you're about to say, for everybody that's watching, it's something brand new. So I like to try and, just go a little slower than I think I need to. And I hear from you guys about that. I know a bunch of you speed up the video and the audio that I give you, but not everybody does. And for the folks that need it a little slower, I'm going to give it a little slower. Now, if you want to do a script for this, and Jim was talking about that before we started, hey, my problem is syncing the audio and the video together. I don't do that. I do a lot of rehearsal, but the stuff you're getting from me is audio given while I recorded, except for when I go back and fix something later. But largely my recording format is to talk and record at the same time. I have tried to script it out where you record a script and then you go and record the video on top of it. And I have tried to do it the opposite direction, where first I do the video and then I go back and do voiceover. And I will tell you that second way for me personally is much easier. So if you want to do it separately, where you make the video and then you do the audio later, in my experience, it's much easier to just make the video, go nice and slow as you make the video, and then go back and record audio over it. Now, the problem is when your voice audio, it takes longer than you did. You went on to the next step before your voice could catch up. And there's a really simple fix for that in ScreenFlow called freeze frame, where you can clip it anywhere and just freeze the frame. And the people watching will never know that's a frozen frame, but it gives you enough time to explain the audio. And I'll show you that when we edit this in just a moment. So there's stuff you can do there. And then the last bit I would say in terms of recording is that Keynote is your friend. Before we started talking today about this, a couple people said that they use Keynote, and I use Keynote as part of ScreenFlow all the time. And I mean, they've got great animations in there, like magic move and things you can do. And the diagramming and simple graphics in there are very easy. So there's nothing wrong with setting up a nice Keynote and kind of performing it in front of ScreenFlow and then using that as the basis of your ScreenFlow video. And I know Keynote has some built-in video tools, but ScreenFlow is far superior. So anyway, with that, I'm going to stop the recording now, and we're going to look at it and start doing a little bit of editing. So I hit stop, and it's prompting me to say, where do I want to save it? I want to save to ScreenFlow example. And I'm going to say okay. And you can see now there is the recording we just made is 3 minutes and 2 seconds. I can pull in the video file, and I can pull in the audio and camera file. And you'll see in this case, when you record camera plus audio, it combines them into one track. So one of the first things I do is I right click on that and I say detach audio. And so now my face and my voice are two separate tracks that I can control them. And I find that one of the tools that ScreenFlow has done very well at over the years is this the audio balancing. So if I select the audio track and I go up now and click audio and say smooth volume levels, and depending on your mic, if you have a really good mic, you may not have to do that. But if I just click that button, it's going to go through and it balances this audio really nicely. So one thing you don't want is where it gets really loud and really soft as you're talking. That kind of solves that problem. But I always feel like it's a little hot. So I always back it down to like 80%. And I do this on a lot of the videos I record. All right. So there we go. And then you can also click these arrows here to make everything a little bigger. Since I've got this big screen, I always do that. And then we're going to drag up. And then you can shrink and expand this. And now you can see what I was talking about earlier with those clicks. Do you guys see on the timeline where I started over? It's right there, 3 clicks, 1, 2, 3. You can see it very easily. So all you have to do then is go to that point in the video. And then I'm going to start talking about ripple delete, which is the one, if you learn one thing today, it's ripple delete. So if you look at your keyboard when you're running ScreenFlow, there's the JKL keys. And that allows you to go backwards. I hit J now. And forward, if I hit L, and K stops. So I can go forward or backward or stop just with the JKL keys. But if you repeatedly press J or L, it goes faster. So if I hit J repeatedly, you can see that it's scrubbing really fast. And so once I get the head where I want, and right after these 3 clicks, which is assigned to me that I just started over, I will hit now above that, there's the I and the O key. Now I will set the in point and O will set the out point, right? And so now all I did was scrub with JKL and hit I and O. And this is important. You guys, is this making sense to you? Anybody want me to do that again? This is JKL. You're just moving around in there and you can set the in point and out point anytime you want. In fact, if you go and you just go to the, and if you hit Option Z, it unselects it. But if I just hit the out point, it just goes to the beginning. So I'm going to hit O there, and then I'm going to hit Command Delete. And then it just deleted the whole thing right up to those 3 ticks. So that's a very quick way to go through and edit video when you're doing your edits. And so you can go through very quickly. Here I've got a video here, and let's say I say, well, this space here I don't want. I'll just go like this, in, out, and then hit Command Delete, and now I just pulled those together just using ripple delete. And it's really that easy. Ripple delete is one of the best tools of ScreenFlow, but there's other things you can do with it too. When you've got this red line here, that's your major timeline. You can grab the handle at the bottom and you can pull it over. Somebody earlier asked, how do I do intros and outros? Well, all I do is I drag it over like that. So that keeps everything wide open at the intro. And then I use Drop Zone. And you can see here in Drop Zone, I've got the Labs intro video card like that. And then I've got in Drop Zone the little music, ditty we have, and then I can just add some text. So I'm going to hit the T button. And this is all built into ScreenFlow now. So I can put text right there. I'm going to say sample ScreenFlow. And then you can format it. And I have happened to already customize this format. So if I go here and say Labs moving title, I'm going to now click on the text, move that to center it. And if I go up here and hit the playhead, now I'm going to hit the L key. And that's it. We just did the intro. And then I'm going to go here and hit the I key to start a ripple delete. And in addition to the JKL, if you have the semicolon and the apostrophe, you can jump forward to edit points. I'm going to go jump forward there, hit the O key, and then Command Delete. And now that's the intro. That's all there is to it. It's not rocket science once you start figuring it out. So there we go. All right. So now the problem is I've got the video playing, but you don't see my face. And the reason you don't see my face is because I've got the video recording in front of the camera video. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to drag this down, and I'm going to drag the video down, and now you see my face is on top. And I can go, if I want, I can even edit that. I can kind of just like shrink it up a little bit and do like that. Now, I'm not sure why what's going on here. I think I did something wrong with, it's probably a security thing with my camera. I'm sorry, my screen isn't showing up on the video right now. I'll have to go back and check what happened there. But it's really that easy to get, yourself rolling with some of this video. Some of the other edit points I would say is that, audio balancing is usually a pretty good idea. You can move blocks around just like I did here. So I just grab one, I can move it, push it around. But I always like this red button here because then it just gives you room to work in the timeline. And then later you can ripple delete to pull them together. I'll do that again. And then there's the freeze frame feature, right? So let me just go over here. The best laid plans, guys. I don't know why we're not seeing. It looks like on the. I guess I wasn't recording the entire screen, but I got. So you see there, the freeze frame is the zoom. It was pulling the frontmost app, I suspect. Oh no, it is. This is the problem of live Zoom calls. It was just the Zoom tools were covering up what I thought was nothing there, but it is there. Okay, so all right, so I'm going to do a cut right here, and and I'm going to hit the T key creates a cut, and if I don't have a track selected, it cuts all of them. So then I can just pull them over, and I'm going to select this screen right here, and then if we go up to Edit, or is it Clip? I usually do it with a shortcut, so I don't know the menu that well. It's Clip. Okay, so go to Clip, add freeze frame. And you can see what that did is it added this little freeze frame here, and that's essentially an image. So I can drag it across and make it as long as I want. And then when the audio plays, it stops, but the screen stays there. So if you're doing audio after, like Jim, you were talking about, that's what you would want to do. Just drag a freeze frame, get your audio right. And when you're done, just do a ripple delete to the next starting point, and you're good to go. So that's kind of a fun little trick. When you go to export these, you can do it under the File menu. At first, I would always recommend saving, then go to Export. And there's a bunch of options here to export. You can see the default here is a HD 1080 video. This one is 4K, so I would hit 100% original to export it as 4K. If you want to do manual settings, you can do it as well. Like when I do the podcast feeds of some of these things that go out for the Labs members, I just go in here and I export it as AAC audio only, and that's the way I get you the audio file for the podcast. But largely, I'm exporting video, and I do it as high a resolution as I'm comfortable with. Hit the export button. It gives you a preview here of what the size of it will be. So if you've got size limitations, you can fix that. Now, if I change the resolution down to 2K, and it should change. Let me try it again. It should give you a better estimate of what that is going to be. See, that's 139 megabytes at 1K and at 2160. It doesn't auto update here. Jeff, do you know how do you get that thing to update that number for you?
I've found that the number is always an estimate, and so it oftentimes won't update. So you'll have an idea with while you work with those files.
Well, I don't really even pay attention. I decide if I'm going to put up 4K to YouTube, I don't care how big it is, But but that's basically it. I mean, there's more to this app. I want to give JF some time to talk, and I also want to have time to answer some questions. But this app is not that difficult to run. If you can run iMovie with a little practice, you can run this app. It's not, I think it's less difficult than Final Cut, a little harder than iMovie, but it's a customizable tool for just this problem. And Jeff, you want to share a few tips with us?
Absolutely. Well, that was great, David. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I do have my own cooking show, ScreenFlow project already ready to go for you. So I'll go ahead and share my screen this time. And do that. See where I can go. Let's see here. I do have. Go ahead and share. Let me just get ready, just like David was doing. Get ScreenFlow in front here. All right. Everybody can see my screen?
Yep. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. Well, that was good. So David gave so many great beginner tips on ScreenFlow, setting up the right way and everything else. That's so important. What I'd like to do, it's probably a good time to ask, are there burning questions before I get into a more key command focused section to help you work a bit more efficiently? Any pressing question you have?
I have a question that I brought up earlier, JF. Okay. We were talking about stopping and starting with the video, and we see a lot on YouTube. It gets kind of herky-jerky,
yes,
which can be distracting. And you indicated there are ways of smoothing that over so it doesn't look as bad. Could you talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. So what you're referring to is the idea that jump cuts, in other words, abrupt cuts from one frame to another. People go a lot of times, they edit with the video in mind, and they forget that the audio in mind, I should say, and they forget that with the video, sometimes it'll result in really quick jump cuts. You see this all over YouTube. It's a lot more difficult to smooth those out, but some of the ways you can avoid these kinds of cuts. My favorite way is using what's called B-roll, so elements that are not the video camera, so you can show something else while you're looking to make some edits in your audio without needing to show the camera jumping around. That's certainly one way that is really helpful. But if you want to stay with the video, you have to go into slightly more specialized apps if you want to truly make a smooth transition. But if you want to stay with ScreenFlow, I find that sometimes a very short crossfade transition can really help. Now, those are some of the cases here, but there are cases where it's very difficult. If your head is over here and then you move over to this position and you continue speaking, it makes it very difficult. So that's when B-roll are useful. And I've done that many times with David's videos. If we need to cut a section and the camera's on, I use B-roll as a way to do it. So those would be my top of mind tips for this as you work through your video. Cool. With that, if everybody's okay with it, let me talk about a few things. Again, focusing on key commands, so navigation using your keyboard. And David mentioned quite a few of them, but right now you're seeing a timeline of a video that David published way back in, I think it was June of last year. So it's one that talked about calendars and shortcuts. And you see my timeline here. I want to talk a little bit about macro navigation. So that's the idea that you can use shortcuts to quickly navigate in the timeline without needing to click around. The first two I want to share, and of course you'll be able to rewatch the video, the home key to go to the beginning of your project, and the end key to go to the end. That may seem obvious, but different software have different commands, and home and end works really well in ScreenFlow. That's what you're seeing right now. Other than that, you can also, if you are zoomed in, you can actually use the plus and minus key to zoom in quickly. So again, on my keyboard, you see where the playhead is right here where my cursor is. If I do plus, I'm zooming in around the playhead. So that means that wherever the playhead is, this is where the focus is going to be when I zoom in. To get back to seeing the whole timeline, you can do Shift-Z, and that's going to get you all the way back to seeing everything. That's a useful one that I really use quite a bit, to focus on everything. Additionally, for trackpad users, if you use the Option key, press down the Option key on your keyboard and slide up and down with 2 fingers on the trackpad. You're doing the same thing, but in a very smooth, flowing way. That's a really cool way to do it. So 2 fingers without clicking, just sliding up and down your magic trackpad. I'm going to do Shift-Z to get back out. So those are really good. Other macro navigation, David mentioned briefly, this area here on the left side is called the track header. So you see all the tracks that are here. You can expand or shrink the tracks by clicking on the arrows up and down like this. And there's a couple of heights, so you can click twice to expand up to 2 times, and that's the maximum height, and you can go back down twice for 2 heights of levels for the tracks. When you are expanded, you'll also see a couple of buttons, again, part of macro navigation, muting the audio on a given track by clicking on the little speaker icon, and muting the visibility on the track by clicking that little eyeball icon. So if I put my playhead right here and I click on the eye, you notice that the video here is going to be invisible for a time. So if I go down to this track and I do the same thing, you can see that the visibility is gone. You don't see the track anymore. All right? So those are useful. And finally, as far as tracks go, you can, if you want, as part of the macro navigation or organization in that case, you can click on the handles. Some people call it the hamburger menu. Click on here and move up and down to change the order of your tracks. So this is David's camera here. I can put it up here and leave it above the other track. Here's my main audio track. I can move it up if I want to. And those tiny bits there are the intro that we have at the beginning of our videos with the Sonic ID and so on. So those are good macro stuff. Now, as far as micro navigation, that's really interesting. And please stop me if you need any clarification here. But I want to talk a little bit about macro navigation. I'm going to go to the beginning here. The idea that the playhead can be moved easily with arrow keys, so keeping the hands on the keyboard. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see. I'm at 34 seconds, 23 frames. I can move in 1 frame increments by hitting the right and left arrow keys on the keyboard. So that's a nice one. Fairly obvious for some of those programs. Now, if I had the shift key in the mix, I'm now moving by 1 second increments. And that can also be useful if you're doing some edits. You can do it that way. Obviously, you can drag the playhead, clicking on it and grabbing it to move it. But I find that shift left and right arrow is a nice way to do some adjustments and go to your previous or next edit.
And let me just insert there, Jeff, real quick.
Yes.
With a Stream Deck Plus, you can program those dials to do shift right arrow, shift left arrow, or
That's
individual. Awesome. So you can actually have a scrubbing off the dials of the Stream Deck Plus. That's the trick. You just using the keyboard command.
Scrubbing is awesome. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't currently have a Stream Deck, but when I think about which model I would get, it would probably be the Plus, simply because of that dial. Or the Loop Deck, which is another similar thing. You're seeing here, by the way, you're seeing some purple icons here on the track. Those are what are called video actions. I'll be able to mention that briefly. But I wanted to also mention as part of the, let me get back on my screen. As part of the micro navigation, David mentioned briefly there the apostrophe and semicolon keys to move to the next, this is apostrophe, and previous edit on your timeline. And that's really useful. When you're moving across your project, it will stop at every track, no matter where they are in the list of tracks. It will stop at the next edit, no matter where it is vertically. So that's really useful to do this. Now, something closely related is the idea that you can nudge little clips of video. I'm going to take this clip here. This is the camera clip of David's right here. And I'm going to simply click and drag it up to the next track above. And all I did here was click on the clip and slide it up to move it. And with that selected, again, I'll use my shortcuts. Here are the arrow keys, or the plus and minus to zoom in. I can now nudge the clip by 1 frame increments by hitting the square brackets, left and right square brackets. So I'm nudging the clip. Let me zoom in some more so you can see. The clip is being nudged 1 frame at a time. You can see it a little bit better now. And just like before, with the moving the frame rate on the timeline, you can do shift and brackets to move it 1 second at a time. Now, this is regardless of what the frame rate is in your project. A lot of us do 30 frames per second. This is the frame rate of the video, but you can also go as high as 60. So I like that command a lot, to nudge clips That's pretty nice. So that's really good there. And then finally, just want to mention, David brought up something that he uses, which is a nice tool called Drop Zone, which he found in his menu bar to insert some clips. What I often do when I want to insert some clips on my timeline is I use another command here in the upper left. There's a plus sign, and you can choose a file to insert right here. Now, this is on your system, on your Mac system, and not part of the ScreenFlow collection of media. Now, there is a shortcut here, and because many of us like to keep our hands on the keyboard, including myself, I use Shift-Command-V, as in Victor, and I get this overlay, which shows me a Finder window, and that will be wherever I choose to be. I have a B-roll and graphics folder when I work with David, and here are a couple of icons that represent some apps that I collect from time to time. And I can insert all three of these either in a sequence, that says here, or stacked above each other. And so I'll go ahead and choose stacked on this time and click open, and watch what happens where my playhead is right here. You'll see all three icons getting stacked above one another. And you can see that they extend, and they're exactly in the same position. So from there, as David was showing, you can select any of those and then move them around so they're now visible. And you know what, for clarity here, let me select this track here, and I'm going to hit the V as in Victor key, and that's another useful shortcut to hide the track. And now you can see those icons a little bit better. Let me move this one over here. Now you can see three various icons, the Health app, the Home app, and the Podcast app. So those are really useful to insert. I will add one more before I wrap up, because I know we want to save time for Q&A. And David did mention you can select multiple tracks this way. You can resize the tracks by dragging the edges, bringing them in closer like this. But because I spend way too much time in ScreenFlow, I usually use single letter keys. And in this case, in order to trim the left edge, or the right edge, I should say, of the clip to where the playhead is, which is right here, I use the E key. You can think of E as the end of the clip. So if I use the E key right now, it trims it to where the playhead is. Now I can do the same for the front or the left edge of the clip. If I move my playhead and I say, okay, this is good right here, I can use the W key to trim the clip to the left edge. And very quickly I was able to trim the clips to the length I needed. And again, keeping your hands on the keyboard, it's going to go a long way as you're trying to edit and meet that deadline sometimes for some of those screencasts. So yeah, those are the few tips I wanted to share. Of course, there's a lot more, but I'd like to maybe pause right here and see if anybody has a question. I'll leave my screen here in case somebody wants me to demo something that I already did.
Well, first, let me say, JF, I thought I had all those tips that you shared down, and at the end, the WE I did not know about. So I learned something. Thank you, buddy.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
This is Jim.
Hi, Jim.
When you did I did the Friends of Dave interview last summer, and you edited that and did a fantastic job. Thank you very much. One of the things that you did in that video that really impressed me is when we would talk about something, the image of, for instance, the website that we were talking about would appear on the screen, and it was even a moving image. It would start at the top of the website and go down. And I wondered, how in the world did you do that? I love that.
That's a fantastic question. I can easily demo this, Jim, for you. And this is, I think of this kind of idea here as when you see in documentaries, you see still photos that are zoomed in very tightly, or they move across, they pan across. I think a lot of my work in ScreenFlow as using camera movements. And so this is easily achievable in ScreenFlow by using something called a video action. And I'm going to use the example of this podcast icon here. It's not very sexy. It's got the background there, but I'm going to grab the edges and make the podcast icon a little bit bigger like this. So you can see now it's kind of bleeding off the edges of the screen. And here is the clip itself right there. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now, video actions is probably something that you'll find yourself using whenever you want to make some movement, you want to resize something, you're doing some animation. And those actions can be found in a couple places. Now, there is a series of inspectors here in the upper right corner, and video actions can be added directly here in the first inspector, the video inspector. And there's a button here that says plus action. Now, notice here on the clip that's selected, when I click on plus action, I get a yellow bar that is overlaid on the clip. And this shows me the beginning state of my clip. And I can choose an ending state of my clip. In other words, how it moves, how it zooms in, where it goes from there. So all I need to do is once I've inserted a video action, I can take the clip and do something with it. Like in my case, I'm going to go ahead and put it right here, up there, and then make it a little bit smaller. And then bring it back in on the canvas. And now you can see it fits a little bit better. You can see David's camera there. And now when I move, you can see that there is a smooth transition from this state here, from that one. Now, it's very fast because the little video action is very short, but I can make it longer. Now, what Jim was saying is, in the case of his website, I wanted to focus on areas of his website slowly so the viewer would have time to see it. So I can do the same thing here. I made the clip longer, I extended the video action, and now when I play from the beginning, you can see that it moves a lot smoother. So those are video actions.
And the way that you got that, for instance, the way that you would put in an image of the website that you took is the same way you put those icons in with a from file, right?
Yes, exactly. So when you do a video edit, Jim, in conclusion for your question, you think of all the elements that are not the main program. In that case, it was the interview with you and Jim, David. Everything else, we typically call B-roll. There's a story behind the term B-roll, but essentially anything else you want to add, you can collect in your folder in your media project, or go on the internet and take a screenshot with CleanShot X, obviously our favorite screenshot tool, and then bring them in to the program and cut away from the video from time to time. So those are pretty cool.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's a great explanation.
Yeah, you can drop just about anything into ScreenFlow, in terms of screenshots or video clips, and they just become additional assets. And like what Jeff was talking about, when you have those awkward transitions when you're on camera, because jump cuts are kind of ugly, if you just drag a little bit of video or an image over the top of it for that moment, if you ever see one of my videos and you see like a B-roll video on top of it, maybe I was picking my nose or something, and JF decided not to put it on. But that's the way you cover that stuff up. And then the other thing, Jeff, could you just show them really quick a transition, like when you don't have B-roll but you've got a video jump? Can you show them how you would do that by doing a dissolve or a transition?
And I can use your camera for this. So let me go here and let's see if I have your camera right there. So I'm going to go ahead and again, I'm using that V key, everyone, a lot to hide. I'm going to hide everything except for the video. And I'll go ahead and make the video a little bit bigger so you can see exactly what I'm doing. And I'm doing this, by the way, by selecting and dragging the edges of the video to make it a little bit larger here. I can also use the scale button down here as well. And I'm going to make it bleed a little bit. Bleeding simply means that the edges of the video are beyond the canvas, just like that. Okay? And I can play and see what's going on. There's no audio here, but let's watch David here. And let's say that right here, I needed to do a smooth transition because there's a word that I want to cut out or something like this. Again, it really all depends on your talent and how they're moving. But here, with the clip selected, I can use the letter T. David mentioned that. This is to make a transition right there on the clip. And from there, what I can do, and again, I'm going to use the shortcuts I just showed you. I'm going to move about 4 frames to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And in order to extend the clip that's right here, we would call that the outgoing clip, the one that's leaving. I will extend it to this position. I could drag it, but because, again, I spent too much time in ScreenFlow, I'm going to hit the letter E, and immediately it brings it in, it overlaps, and puts in a cross-dissolve transition. So just like this. And it was barely perceptible, just like this. Yeah. Because of the type of edit, I successfully did a nice transition and cut a few pieces there. Now, sometimes it'll be a little bit harder, but you can also get away with it. For example, here's a movement where David turns his head right here. So maybe I need to cut this here. And I'm going to go forward a little bit and do it from there. Now, there are many ways I can do this, but what I'm going to do now is use David's ripple delete trick. I'm going to go to the beginning, hit I, go here and hit O, and then Command delete to do ripple delete. Now I've butt in this stuff. So you can see now from here to here, there's a big transition, isn't there? Big movement. Now I can attempt to do a crossfade and then play back the result. It's a bit less jarring, and you can adjust it to get the result that you want. So again, this is sort of a band-aid solution. It's not always going to work as smoothly as you want, but that's what I use a lot for live camera stuff.
And one of the tricks is when you're recording these things to try and keep your head in the same damn place, which is a lot harder than you think it is.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, so I know that was a lot, but if anybody else has a question.
Any other questions, anybody? I can't see the chat. Is anybody in the chat got questions?
I'm going to take a look right now. Let's see. I can go ahead and stop the share at this point.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah. There you
go. Here's some interesting. Horst said, I stopped using a mic in my voice for tutorial videos I produced at work a while ago. I've been using Microsoft Text-to-Speech. It has been working great for me. Makes it super easy to redo things. Yeah. And then the customers don't have to suffer through my German accent. Yeah, that makes sense. I do think a human voice, I generally prefer it if you can. Steve was talking about choppy edits. I think we kind of covered that a little bit about ways you can get around that. Also, people are more forgiving, honestly, I think, than you think about that stuff. Don't get too hung up on it.
Yeah. One thing, David, if that's okay, while I think about it, when it talks, you were mentioning, and Horst, you mentioned it earlier, the whole idea of doing overdubs on your voiceover, ScreenFlow actually does have a fantastic feature called Add Narration. David and I use this when he gives me videos, and we may have to rephrase something, maybe clarify a thought. And so what I do is I use a combination of showing captions and putting some text so he doesn't have to think about it. I just have the text there for him to say. And we use a feature called narration, which essentially, Jim, I believe you mentioned that, it puts ScreenFlow in a mode where you can easily overdub a voiceover directly on the timeline where you are, and it does it very, very quickly, very well.
And you just got to land it like within the time that you have available.
Yes, exactly.
It's a really nice feature. I mean, ScreenFlow just continues to impress me. And when people say, well, why don't you look at this app or that app? I'm like, well, ScreenFlow is not that expensive, and it does a great job. It's really hard for me to justify going to something else. And then, JF, who I work with a lot, is one of the best people at the world in using it. So why would we want to change tools?
Exactly. There's a great question, David, that came from Nicolas Poirier. Salut, Nicolas. That asks about, do you sometimes use videos from ScreenFlow as a part of a larger project with another nonlinear editor such as DaVinci, Final Cut Pro? The answer is yes. You can absolutely make amazing compositions in ScreenFlow, and that can become something you export as a standalone video that you can then continue putting in your favorite NLE program. Absolutely. ScreenFlow is a great tool to build compositions, not always videos, sometimes animations, graphics, and stuff. Yeah.
And Dave asked about keystrokes. ScreenFlow has a feature where you can have it record and display your keystrokes. That we lost that feature for a little while when Apple was upping the security, but we got it back recently. Mm-hmm. So you can have it show just your modifier keys or all keystrokes, and you can turn that on right in the app, and you can turn it on within the clip. So you can just say, for this 10 seconds, show my keystrokes, but don't show my keystrokes for the whole video. So
yes, that's a fantastic feature. And you can also customize, by the way those keystrokes look on the screen. By default, ScreenFlow puts a banner all the way across the bottom. David and I are not fans of this, so we created a style that sort of is a bit more on brand, so it looks a little bit better.
Looking at your old video, Jeff, it just reminds me of me working with that stupid screen behind me as we were doing this construction. I'm now really glad we did it.
Oh, man.
It's a nice upgrade. Upgrade.
Oh, absolutely. Whew. Very cool.
Guys.
I'm sorry, David, quick question. When you guys are working on a document together, is it in a cloud source and you're both working on it, or are you kind of sharing it back and forth?
We have an Airtable. For the main thing JF does for me is the field guide edits. And so we've got an Airtable, and I mark it on his desk. It's like JF's desk or David's desk. Mm-hmm. And so we mark it to his desk, and then it's kind of like the sock on the doorknob thing. You just, once you hand it over, you just don't touch it and let him have it. And then we use Dropbox as a back end to keep it in sync.
One important thing about this, David, while I think of it, ScreenFlow is not, it's a package with a lot of folders and files. So we never work collaboratively on a ScreenFlow file that's living in Dropbox. We always make local copies. David and I both have an inbox in Dropbox, and we share things back and forth. And I always save a local copy. We're very careful with this because ScreenFlow doesn't play, it's not a collaborative tool, unlike perhaps something like Loom. So we're perfectly comfortable after so many years of working together to share that stuff that way. Works really well.
And to be super safe, not every time, but most of the time, I'll zip it up when I send it to him because it's a package file, just to make sure there's no problem. You put it on Dropbox as a zip file, then he can take it to his local computer and unzip it. And there's never a problem when you do that. Dropbox has got better at package files over the years, but if you go back a few years, sometimes package files would get garbled on a Dropbox service.
Great. Thank you.
So it's not really collaborative, to tell you the truth, but it's collaborative in the sense that, like, for voiceover stuff, he can mark the file up for me. I can get it and do my voiceovers really quick and get it back to him. And then just to kind of finish the circle, Jeff, I do the initial edit. Jeff does the second edit. I go back and do any corrections if necessary. Then he does the final pass. We export it out, and then we get it up into the platform. So it's just it's just kind of a little bit of a bounce project back and forth until we get it right. And if I do my rehearsals properly, usually it's only one round of edits. I really feel like I said that during the main session, but rehearsing this stuff before you do it really helps kind of get it together and make sure everything. You don't want to be surprised when you're recording and push a button and something doesn't do what it's supposed to do. That's why the shortcuts for Mac Field Guide was so difficult for me, because I would do the rehearsals and it would work. And then because of some bug in shortcuts for Mac, I would go to record and it just wouldn't work, and some of those videos in the shortcuts for Mac Field Guide were recorded 4 and 5 times because Apple kept changing the rug, pulling the rug from underneath me. They would change the way it would function. Finally, it got stable and we were able to finish it, but it took a while.
It did. Dave, hi, Dave. Dave Meyer asked about the keystrokes. We mentioned that a little bit earlier. So, Dave, as long as you have a ScreenFlow screen recording clip, an official within ScreenFlow screen recording clip, you can turn on keystrokes, showing keystrokes after the fact. You don't have to turn it on. As a matter of fact, if you wouldn't turn it on while you record, it would be visible afterwards. Now, some people, including someone at Screencast Online, Lee Garrett, excellent screencaster, he uses an app, and I know, David, you've used it a few times, Keystrokes Pro. That's a program that runs on top of ScreenFlow, and that shows keystrokes all the time. And that's not something you can hide or show. So your choice is whether or not you want to see it all the time or turn it on afterwards.
But on that, I used Keystrokes Pro only during the period that ScreenFlow couldn't do it. As soon as ScreenFlow got the feature back, I stopped using it. Because, just keep everything in ScreenFlow. Make it easy on yourself. Well, as expected, I don't think a lot of Labs members are interested in this, but a few are intensely interested in it. So I hope we've been able to help you guys out. I really appreciate early access subscribers. You guys in particular are there for me. And I want to make sure that we give you good content and a good product for what you're paying. And so if you have questions about this, let me know. Between me and JF, we can always answer your questions, and good luck with your screencast projects. But, the big answer is get ScreenFlow, spend a little time, and see where you go.
Yes.
We got one more question, though. One more question just came
one
up.
more question? Okay.
Yeah. Nicholas.
Nicolas, yeah.
Hi, guys. I don't know if it's the right forum, but you published an article, David, on the New Yorker problem. I think it was last week. And I just wanted to encourage you to keep pushing out as much content as you can as you can. And for me, the thing is maybe about notifications rather than the quantity of content.
Sure.
Maybe the way of fine-tuning it would be to have notification maybe more adjustable. I'm talking about emails mostly, but I don't think you should lower your content level. And I think we all, really, I'm looking for the word in English, but we all really like the nerdier content.
Sure. Well, thank you. I have no intention of slowing down. If anything, as I'm getting the workflows ironed out, you're going to get more. But I'll tell you, that question about notifications is a difficult one. When I first started doing the labs, the intention was to send one email a week with links to everything that got released during the week. But then I had people quitting saying, you're not giving me enough. And then when I'd write them, they were like, well, I didn't know that you did that. And I didn't know that you did that. So the easiest way for me to do it is just to send an email every time there's something new. And it really is a catch-22 for me, because I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do, because some people don't want the regular emails and some people want them. So I really get requests on both sides. And same thing with the blog. Like on the blog, each new piece of content gets a post, which allows you to go to the member page and follow up on it. There's not a way in the memberful system for me to say, just send a weekly email, but don't send this person the other email. I wish I could have more granular control of it. One way you could do it is just if you just go to the member page and check in once a week, everything is there. That's auto updated in there, and you could unsubscribe from the emails. But yeah, I'm open to suggestions, but I can tell you whatever I do is going to make some people mad. It's kind of a difficult problem to solve.
Well, you can always put you absolutely. The equivalent of a tag or whatever, maybe the topic of the information that you use in the subject line of the notification email. And then people can always create a rule in their email program. If they don't like that topic, just delete that email. And it keeps keeps their inbox not as heavy and not get as many notifications, doesn't piss them off. Yeah.
Yeah. But then I got an email yesterday from a guy saying, I love going into my inbox every day and seeing something from you. If you miss a day, it makes me sad, So it's like, what am I supposed to do, guys? I mean,
you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah. But my point of that video wasn't to say I'm slowing down. It's just to say, look, I just wanted to make clear, I don't expect everybody to watch it all. This is just kind of, this is just kind of the way. This is what I'm going to do, and one guy said, well, you're acting like you got shot out of a cannon. You're never going to be able to keep it up. And I'm like, actually, I am, because this is way less work than being a lawyer and a lot more fun. So I actually enjoy doing it. I'm still getting the balance right between the content and the field guides and the blog and the podcasts. And I'm working on that. And then we had this construction, and it just feels to me like I've been in a period of transition for about a year, and I'm kind of coming out of it. You guys got to see how brilliant JF is today. So he helps me out to make sure the trains keep running. And I really like what I'm doing, and I intend to keep doing this until nobody listens to me, and then I have no choice but to stop. But as long as there's one person listening, I think I'm going to keep doing it. I just love it. So I'm very fortunate. And that's a small problem, but I was hearing it from enough people that I felt like I needed to address it. I was honestly hesitant to publish that video because I was afraid then people were going to say, oh yeah, you're right, you do too much. Or people are going to say, well, I don't want you to stop doing it. It's like, it's kind of hard when you talk about the kind of underlying business issues with your customers. But I just wanted to kind of be upfront about it and say, look, nobody needs to watch all this stuff. Like, I am sure there'll be a bunch of people that'll say, screencasting, I don't care about that. And then they'll never watch this video, and that's okay, you know?
Yeah, there's a wide breadth of content to cover. And I was so happy, David, when you gave me permission to not watch everything. I felt so relieved.
And then, because I also stray into like productivity stuff sometimes, and that's toxic to some people. They don't want to hear that. So I just try to like keep it, diverse enough that everybody can get something they enjoy. It's just, honestly, that's been my whole strategy the whole time of MacSparky. With a Mac Power Users episode, if anybody wants to know the secret recipe of Mac Power Users, I want every person who listens to get something they can use out of every episode. And that's why when we have guests on, I pull the topics around and I move the show contents about what hardware they're using, what kind of nerdy thing are they doing at the end. I ask them for app recommendations. I want to be able to land something for each audience member in each episode where they're like, oh, okay, well, for that hour and a half, I actually learned about a new app or I learned something. And and so everything I make is kind of along those lines. And with the labs, the way I look at it, when you look at the amount of content that comes out over a month, maybe it's 30 pieces of content and maybe only 5 of them really landed with you. But I feel like if 5 did, then you got your money's worth, Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to rant on about that, but it is something I'm trying to figure out how to give you guys the best possible. And I wish I had a better way of slicing the onion to say, like, this person wants a weekly email, this person wants every email, but there's just not a way to do that. But, although I'm gonna send an email to Memberful and see if they're working on something. Maybe there's something I can do that I don't know yet. Either way, guys, thanks a lot. I hope you got something out of this. If you do try screencasting and you run into a brick wall, let us know. Between JF and I, we've made all the mistakes many times, so I'm sure we could help you.
Absolutely. I put my email in the chat, but in case you didn't see it come through, it's and I know I'm doing this on a video, jf@macsparky.com. So
yeah, well, not that many people are going to see this video. It's just for the early access members, so you're good. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great weekend. Was Saturday okay for this, guys? I see the kind of the usual folks here. I was hoping we'd be able to get some people. Although I do see a few people here that can't usually make it. Did that help you out? Anybody here just because it's a Saturday?
It did for me. Sometimes during work hours to attend, watch them afterwards. It was super helpful. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, I'm that's definitely in the rotation. We're going to do some of these late in the day so we can accommodate Asia, New Zealand, Australia, and we're going to do some of them on Saturday so we can accommodate the folks that work. We're going to make sure everybody gets a chance. Either way, again, thanks a lot, guys. I when I do these deep dives, I could do them just as a video and release them, but having a live audience, I find, makes it so much more fun for me, and I think it makes the video product a lot better because I get that feedback and understand where your questions are coming from. So you taking the time to be here made it a better product, and I thank you. Thank you for all your support in the MacSparky Labs. JF, you were the first person to help me on a deep dive, and it was kind of fun sitting here for a while and just watching you and not having to be the guy on the stage. So thank you so much, JF. You're the best, and have a great day, everybody.
See you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.